Well, Congress has departed town this afternoon and will return next Tuesday. So what got accomplished this week and what did not? Joining me now to discuss this, Suzanne Bowdey, Editorial Director and Senior Writer at the Washington Stand. Suzanne, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Tony.
So a lot happened this week, and in the background of it, all Congress was focused, a lot of it was focused on the budget reconciliation. But there seems to be a few roadblocks along the way. Let's talk about that.
Well, poor Mike Johnson, I don't think he's had a week yet where he hasn't had some sort of major obstacle to overcome. And you have to give him credit. He's really handled his job miraculously, as some would put it. He's dealing with, as we all know, a very slim majority, just 3 votes he can lose on any piece of legislation at this point. But within the Republican Party, unfortunately for him, are some very clear dividing lines between the moderates in the party from blue states, swing states who are vulnerable in the next election, and also the hardline conservatives, which I would assume Johnson himself, if he were still just a congressman, would find himself aligned with. So he's walking a tightrope here, trying to please both sides in order to come up with a one big, beautiful bill that will actually make it over the finish line into the Senate. This week has presented a lot of obstacles. You were just talking in the last segment about Medicaid reform. Unfortunately for Mike Johnson, the two sides of his caucus have very different ideas about what those reforms should look like. I think that you outlined some of those with the doctor there. But for him, he's up against a wall right now trying to please both sides. It's not an enviable position to be in, but as you've talked to Mike Johnson extensively, you know that he's been able to do some amazing things, and I hope for his sake that he's able to do that and meet the deadline that's imposed on him, which is sometime between Memorial Day and July 4th.
So let's talk a little more specifics when it comes to the Medicaid. I know we were talking about this with Paul, but I think it's very important that people understand what we're discussing. I'm going to play clip number 13 of Congressman Mike Lawler.
I've been very clear in this, and that I will not support any proposal that cuts benefits or reduces services for Medicare or Medicaid. These programs are lifelines for millions of Americans, and we must strengthen them, not chip away at them.
All right, he's one of the moderates who are saying they will not support a reconciliation bill if there are any reductions to Medicaid. Now, let me be very clear. There are no reductions being proposed for Medicare, which is for the elderly. The Medicaid, it's simply, as we're being discussed, was the expansion and the disproportionate 9-to-1 federal funding for able-bodied individuals, men who don't have children, who could go to work. I mean, this sounds like common sense. Why would we be doing this?
It is common sense. And Chip Roy, one of the conservatives that's been leading the effort to really reform Medicaid, had said, hey, we're not cutting any sort of care for these populations. What we're doing is making sure that we're serving the correct populations. As you brought up, this has been expanded. I mean, right now, I think about 90 million Americans are currently on Medicaid, which is a shocking number when you consider the cost that accrues to taxpayers. All that these conservatives are asking for is that A, you get rid of the fraud, waste, and abuse that DOJ has identified. B, you make sure that if you are able-bodied and you can work, that you work to get those benefits. 3, that no illegals be a part of Medicaid, which, as we've seen from some of the DOJ work, there are illegal immigrants profiting from this, and that the care of the actual vulnerable does not come after the care of these people that should not be on the program in the first place.
So to address those issues, you are dialing back Medicaid. You're not affecting people who should legitimately get it, but you are reducing. And so what these moderates are saying, we don't want to touch it. We want status quo. We want to continue the Ponzi scheme that the Democrats put in place that will ultimately break the system and be there for no one. That's what they're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I hear them
No,
say.
you're absolutely right. And it's very disappointing to hear that, along with these moderates, as you mentioned, saying that they won't defund Planned Parenthood, which is the easiest lift of all. We're talking about something that 57% of the American people oppose, which is their tax dollars going to an organization whose primary goal is killing innocent young children. So at some point, Mike Johnson has to say, well, if you can't cut Medicaid and you won't defund Planned Parenthood, where are these cuts going to come from? And the answer is Medicaid is the biggest chunk, the biggest pool that they can go after to find these savings. They're looking for a floor now of $2 trillion. We saw that 32 House Republicans sent a letter to the House Speaker saying we will not accept less than $2 trillion. That's about $500 billion more than they said earlier. So we're not even looking for $1.5 trillion. We're looking for $2 trillion. And to do that without Medicaid, which makes up about $900 billion of our spending, where do you find those cuts? At some point, the moderates have to give, and it's time for the conservatives to say, look, we've compromised enough. It's time for you to compromise.
All right, you're going to get me all worked up here when we start talking about Planned Parenthood. This organization is built on a lie. It conducts itself fraudulently. And it's doing so with taxpayer dollars. Now, and this is a free country. You can do whatever you want. I mean, within the confines of the law. But I would say they even break the law. I mean, they've been caught trafficking in human baby body parts. They have been caught on film helping minors get abortions without their parents knowing about it, facilitating human trafficking. And now they're doing the same thing when it comes to so-called gender-affirming experimental drugs, circumventing the rights of parents. Okay, so they're doing this. It's illegal, and they're under investigation in certain states. Why should the federal government be writing them a check upwards of $700 million?
There's absolutely no reason, and it's something that I believe both sides should be able to come to an agreement on, regardless of whether you think abortion should be legal or not. The American taxpayer should not be forced to fund it, many of whom oppose abortion at all stages, let alone most Americans, even on the liberal side, who say after the first trimester, we don't want anything to do with abortion in this country. And then to have them subsidize it, which right now is up to almost 9 months and in some states, or even after birth, as we've seen with some of the infanticide laws. It's unconscionable. And now with a White House, with a Congress that are led by Republicans, this should be an easy lift. It should be the first thing they do and the first savings they find.
Now, these moderates, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania and Mike Lawler of New York, that we heard a clip from him. This was a closed-door meeting that took place yesterday where they were saying, hey, we didn't even know about this, and we're not going to support it. Well, it's been in reconciliation from the very start. Now, to be very clear, these funds are covered by the Hyde, so they don't directly fund abortion, but we know that money is fungible, and so it takes care of the overhead so they can spend their money either, ironically, on political activity, as they have been doing in their engagement in elections, or they can use it to cover the overhead in the abortion clinics. So the bottom line is they're getting federal money. They're getting taxpayer dollars to do this. So, folks, I want to encourage you. This is where we draw the line. If we don't do it now, when do we do it? I mean, when will Planned Parenthood be defunded? When will we put aside organizations like SPLC? If the Republicans don't do it now, when will it happen? So text the word Congress to 67742. That's Congress to 67742, and I'll send you a link so that you can contact your member of Congress and say, defund Planned Parenthood. This is time to draw the line and say no more. We're not doing this. All right. So, Suzanne, on to other issues as Congress has left town for the week. They come back on Tuesday. What other business did they accomplish or was left undone?
Well, I will say reconciliation has taken up a good chunk of the Republicans' time this last week, actually for the last month or so. I know that the Trump budget was also released, some very interesting things in the Trump budget, which is usually just a guideline for how the party and the White House is hoping that Republicans will deal with spending in the upcoming months as they're working on appropriations. You do still have several House committees that are going line by line, trying to find the savings that they need in appropriations to do this reconciliation bill. So I believe some of the more contentious markups will be next week in the House Energy and Commerce Committee, for one, where all these Medicaid reforms will have to come to the forefront. They'll have to find some consensus there as they go into the markups, and then they'll vote in committee and then bring it out to the floor. But that in itself should be pretty interesting. They will have to find some sort of agreement before they go into the markups, or this will drag out even longer.
So are we going to see a puff of white smoke above the Capitol by the end of next week?
I'm sure Mike Johnson would like for that to happen.
I mean, they have set a deadline in part because of the debt ceiling cliff, because the debt ceiling will probably be hit in June. So they were hoping to get this through the House onto the president's desk by Memorial Day. That's not going to happen. They might be able to get it through the House, but they're going to have to come to terms with where they find, as you said, initially it was 1.5. There are conservatives saying it needs to be $2 trillion. I don't see how they're going to get to that place. I think 1.5 trillion is probably going to be the best that they can do. But even that is going to be a stretch if they can't get their moderate colleagues to go along with some of these reforms.
Well, and unfortunately, one of the ideas that you saw floated today by Trump himself, if they can't come to some agreement on Medicaid, was, well, we're going to have to bring taxing the rich back on the table, because how do you pay for all of this? How do you continue to pay for people who don't belong on Medicaid and all of the other government bloat that we're not dealing with? Nobody said this would be easy. Nobody said that paring back all of this spending from years and years of programs that have ballooned out of control would be easy. But it has to be done. Otherwise, you're not going to have the extension of the Trump tax cuts. And if you don't, as Mike Johnson has said, every family will get a $2,000 to $3,000 tax hike. So they're going to have to find some way to pay for it. That's either by saying, hey, we can't do the Trump tax cuts, we can't make them permanent, we can only extend them for a few years if we can't find the money to pay for it, or we're going to have to raise taxes elsewhere. And I don't think the Republican Party would really enjoy the campaign ads of raising taxes as a way to pay for some of President Trump's biggest agenda items.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well back in 1992 for George H.W. Bush when taxes were raised. And look, you talk about debt. $36 trillion. Go look at the debt clock that is moving faster than Al Sharpton moves toward a camera. And it is just rapidly going up. We're almost at $37 trillion. If we don't address it now, when do we address it? Suzanne Bowdey, thanks so much for joining us and giving us a wrap up for the week.
Thanks, Tony.